So the kids and I had this really great idea. We were talking about business ideas, and we're like, let's start a computer business, computer repair business. Well, do we know enough about computers? So I'm not sure, but here's our plan. The kids came up with this. So the plan is, if somebody has a problem with their computer, they bring it to us, we charge them a fee just like any computer fixing store, and then we go in the back and we restart the computer. And if it's anything more than that, we'll probably send it off or have to subcontract it. But we're pretty sure that 80-85% of the problems can really be fixed through restarting the computer. Genius, right? Because it's true. Like, if you call a tech line, a helpline, or if you can do that at work, whatever that looks like, the first thing they tell you to do is restart your computer every single time. And sometimes we have to remember that, right? It's like, oh, I'm so frustrated. It's like, oh, I didn't restart my computer yet. I'm going to do that. And it does. 85% of the time it fixes it. So I still think it's a genius idea. I don't think we're going to run with it. So if you want to, go for it, right? Start a computer repair business. Call it Restart if you want. So that's what we're talking about today. What about a restart in 2022? We talked about remembering what God's done in our lives in 2021, all the good and perfect gifts He's given us. We've talked about refocusing our values, like make sure that we're really living out those values. We know what they are. And I challenge you to make one of those values cherishing, remembering, reading the Word of God. Put that, don't just have a Bible on the coffee table and all the other books have to go underneath it, right? Like Bible's always on top. But make it a book that you read, right? Read it as a family. Doesn't have to be a lot, like read a chapter a day as a family, read a couple verses and then talk about it. Like if you go through most Bibles, if you go through the Gospels, each section will be labeled, right? So Jesus feeds the 4,000, Jesus heals a leper, Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. So read one of those sections and then talk about it. That's pretty low prep, families. Moms, dads, kids, you could bring this up. Say, hey, why don't we talk about John 10:26 today? And then bring it to the table, read it, and run with it. So, but make that a value so you're finding ways to get into the Word of God. But today we're going to talk about a restart. What if 2022 is a chance for you to restart? And if you're getting antsy, you say, well, Ryan, it's January 16th. Did we miss that? Like, no. Like, you may have given up on your New Year's resolutions by now. Technically, I think it's 90% in February, but you've probably waned or you want to do one day and you missed it. And you can do these anytime, right? Like, remember, refocus, restart. We're going to get to Revelation, and we're going to get to relationship. So if you found the RE pattern at this point, right? So, but where can we restart? Here's where I'm going to ask us to commit and restart to. Listen to Luke 10:27. Thou shalt love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your mind. Love your neighbor as yourself. Right? Like, love your neighbors out on the sign, right? So we've got to live that one out, CCC, right? Like, we've printed that in big font for everybody to see. It's a tangible piece that we can reach out. But as we restart for 2022, how could we live out this idea of loving God with all of our heart? What does that look like? Like, the first thing you have to do is realize, like, do I believe that? Like, is that true for me? Is that a good thing? Like, it's okay to ask that question. Like, am I supposed to love my spouse with all my heart? My kids with all my heart? Am I supposed to love my dad, right? If you're a kid, my dad or mom with all my heart? And if I do that, can I still love God with all my heart? Right? Like, is there a tension there? Because if there's a tension and you're not sure, you can't do it. Right? So the way that I see that working is that we love God with all of our heart, and then our love actually increases. So if you've got this little bitty ball of love right here, and you're like, I don't want to split that up, because then how am I going to love my wife, and my kids? Well, when you love God, your circle gets bigger. So there's more love to go around. Right? So you love God with all your heart, and all of your loved ones fit in there. So you're not neglecting, you're not holding back your love from anyone. You're loving God with all your heart. You're finding time for God. And then as you hear His voice, because the sheep hear the shepherd's voice, then you know where to go with that. You know how to love your wife better. You know how to love your husband better, your kids better. Like, that all flows, but you start with love God with all your heart, with all your soul. You start to renew your mind. You get into the Word. And then your soul's loving God. You might not even consciously be doing that, right? You're just leaning towards God. Matt Maher has that song that says, when temptation comes my way, I lean towards you. Right? Like when we get to a crossroads, if we've done this work, we have momentum towards Jesus. Right? We've renewed our mind. It doesn't just snap and suddenly you're back in your old ways. Right? Like you're building up this momentum. So you get love, and you fill your love with God, your whole heart, your whole soul, with all your strength. Right? Like how are you taking care of your body? How are you using that to serve others? Right? Like are you in a place where you can use your strength for God? Like do that intentionally. Use your mind, right? With all your mind. So what are you putting in? What are your inputs? Right? I always hammer this like this might be a great time to restart your YouTube history. Did you know you can do that? So if you look at strongman competition videos, and they start to pop up, right? If you look at worship videos, eventually they start to pop up. They don't pop up as much as some other things, oddly enough. But if you look at Big Ten basketball, then Big Ten basketball pops up in your YouTube feed. Well, you can actually go to history, and you can reset just the history of YouTube, right? So you can start with a blank slate, and then whatever you put in that search function is what will be suggested for you. Wouldn't that restart change some of your inputs? Right? Like then you could intentionally go in there and say, well, how can I improve my marriage? How to relate to your kids? How to study the Bible? Right? How to serve others? And you can get some sermons on there. You can get some worship pieces on there. You can get, you could look up the skit guys, right? Like the skit guys are like a funny Christian duo that create really funny videos. But they're all Christian-based, and there's a lesson to them. Like those could start popping up, right? And you could start to input those into your mind, so you're thinking about those things all the time, right? You could have something in your car. You could have something on the walls. Things that your inputs are purposeful and move you towards Christ. Because the verse says, thou shalt love the Lord thy God. For God is Lord. Yes, Lord. There's no Lord in Lord, right? If he's Lord, it's yes, Lord. And you're going to love him with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And if you're doing those first ones, then the last one's super easy, right? If you're loving God, if you're renewing your mind, if you're using your strength and you're serving, right? Using your body to serve, if your mind has great inputs because you've refocused on the Word of God, and that's one of your values, then loving your neighbor becomes easier. And actually, if you get really geeky on this verse, it says, love the Lord your God with your heart, your soul, your strength, and your mind. And then there's a semicolon, breaking that up a little bit. Before that, it's commas, because those are the things you're going to love God with. And then you love your neighbor as yourself. Do those things first. When you lean into God, it makes it easier for you to lean into others, in your family, your neighbors, in your church, all those different things. So as you look to restart 2022, evaluate the things that you're currently doing. You do not have to do the same things you did in 2021. You could restart your giving. Maybe you want to make sure that you're giving in the places that you want to give. You should not be giving out of obligation. Well, we've always given to that ministry. Maybe that's not where you're being led right now. Restart those things so that you know why you're giving. Right? We're going to do that same thing in our family. And I've got a feeling that a lot of those we're going to continue giving. But we're going to be re-energized. Like, Shepherd's Gate, that when we give to them, we're giving towards our own rest and our peace. Man, I love giving to them. Right? So it'll regenerate. So restart some of those things. Let it be giving. I love the idea of resetting your YouTube history so you don't know what's going to pop up, or you can control what pops up. And do that every now and then. You don't have to just restart in January, right? You could do that in March, April, or June. Restart habits that you have in the morning, right? If you are committed now, one of your values is reading the Word of God, restart that habit, right? You might need to end some habits so you can restart some good habits. But don't be afraid to restart, recommit right here to the cross. Be re-inspired, right? When you were first saved, like there's just this excitement that can come with that. And if any of that's waned or if any of that's dulled a little bit, recommit. Let the sun shine. Like, be inspired by those things. So just restart that. Don't be afraid to restart it. And you don't have to just save this for January, right? You can restart anytime. That's the beauty of God's grace. All right, so get out there as a family, figure out what things that you want to restart, set some great habits for 2022, and don't be a stranger. We're all neighbors.